So I'm curious, what did you learn tonight about what these two guys might do in the next 4 years that would be different on either the key issues of Afghanistan or dealing with that nuclear threat from Iran?
Actually, I think that's one of the surprises of this evening. I think, in fact, there isn't that much difference. What came across, to me at least, was the feeling that Obama knew more deeply and more naturally what he was advocating or what he was doing in foreign affairs. I had more of a sense that Romney, while not challenging him on fundamentals, tended to recite things that he apparently learned in the course of the briefings, but one didn't have a sense that he really had a deep feeling for the nuances, for the complexities of these problems. But insofar as the international reaction to them is concerned, I think the world probably found this very reassuring, because there was some concern in the past that Romney might not be familiar enough with the problems, that he might be more tempted to go to war in Iran, that he was less concerned for peace between Israel and Palestine. And he was actually the only one to bring up the need for more effort to bring peace to Palestine and to Israel. So in that sense, I think world public opinion would be somewhat reassured.
What about Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu? I don't think he saw anything that looked like a green light to go after the Iranian nuclear program from either of these candidates tonight, but maybe you saw it otherwise.
No, I agree with you. I thought both of them took the position that, well, of course, if we have to go to war because the Iranians are moving closer to nuclear weapons, either capability or actuality, then we may have to use force. But they kept repeating, as a last resort, as a last resort. What they didn't say, however, was that war would not only be confined to Iran and Israel. And that's something that I think the public needs to be reminded and ought to be warned that the war with Iran would have far greater complications than just a conflict between Iran and the United States. It would set the entire region on fire, and it would really undermine the international economy. I suspect both leaders, both candidates know that, and this is another reason why they emphasize so frequently that going to war with Iran was a last resort.
You know, one of the
Netanyahu, that must have been disappointing.
You know, one of the areas where there's been a difference in tone between the two candidates previously was on how much support the U.S. should be giving the opposition in Syria in an attempt to get rid of President Assad. Did you detect a difference tonight, or did they veer together onto that same path of helping but not helping too much?
I think Romney wanted to emphasize that he would be willing to do more, that he would be a more activist leader regarding that issue. But when he started enumerating what he would do, it really wasn't that fundamentally different. He certainly was declining to commit himself to any use of force, either on the ground or in the air.
You know, Dr. Brzezinski, maybe we can listen together to a passage here from the debate in which I thought President Obama made an interesting point about the perspective of Mitt Romney on foreign policy problems in general. Let's listen.
That you recognize that al-Qaeda is a threat. Because a few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back because, you know, the Cold War has been over for 20 years.
So is that old think or is that new think when you look at Vladimir Putin? Who's right on that one?
You know, they didn't really get into any serious discussion of the problems with Russia. The problems with Russia certainly cannot be confined to the one sentence that Romney uttered some time ago, that Russia is the number one geopolitical foe of the United States. But there is a serious problem with Russia. Russia is on a nationalistic binge, and Putin is a very, very intensely anti-American leader. And that could become a problem for us, particularly if things were to get out of hand in the Middle East. Then I think Russia might have a free hand and be tempted to use it vis-a-vis Georgia, perhaps vis-a-vis Azerbaijan, and that would have, of course, very negative consequences for us and particularly for Europe. But they never got into that. So Russia was really left alone. I thought the exchange between them on China was interesting. I thought it was interesting because Obama came out more strongly in terms of being critical regarding China, of, in a sense, admonishing the Chinese and so forth. Romney operated at the same time on both levels. On the one hand, Yes, he reiterated the same points, but on the other hand, he went much further than Obama in saying that it is in the mutual interest of China and of the United States to have a decent relationship, to have a partnership, and that he felt reasonably certain that the Chinese realized that and that they weren't unreasonably pursuing a policy of hostility towards the United States.
So that's interesting, Dr. Brzezinski, because you're almost suggesting a role reversal. It's been Mitt Romney who's been more the aggressor on economic relations with China previously, but tonight you saw it the other way around.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That was a surprise to me.
Let me ask you about one other area that came up in the debate, which was the defense budget, defense spending. That's a clear area of difference, and that was not papered over tonight, I thought. The question, I guess, to the domestic audience is, can the U.S. afford the defense budget that Mitt Romney proposes? I guess I'd ask you a different question. Does the U.S. Need the kind of defense rebuilding that Mitt Romney was talking about today?
I thought on that exchange, Obama really nailed him, particularly when he made the point that you don't measure weaponry by antiquated standards. The fact of the matter is that the destructive capability of our Navy, of our Air Force, of our ground forces is infinitely higher than it was in the past. So you can't compare the number of warships now and some 30 years ago. I thought he made a good point there, and Romney didn't really have much of a response. You know, more generally, I had a feeling that Obama spoke with great confidence about foreign affairs, and you had the sense that he was really in control of the issues. With Romney, when speaking of foreign affairs, I had a feeling he was, in a sense, occasionally feeding back to the public the briefings that he got. But he came into his own whenever he succeeded, and he did succeed several times, in turning the issue to domestic economic issues. There, I thought he was very effective and was scoring points, in a sense offsetting the asymmetry of punches, counter-punches in the exchanges on foreign affairs.
You know, the other area where I thought there was a clear difference is the question of how much al-Qaeda has been contained, or to use the president's term, decimated over the last 4 years. Governor Romney painted a picture of a resurgent al-Qaeda almost, and I think President Obama was making the case it's been put back into a box. Where do you come out on the al-Qaeda question?
Well, I personally feel that Obama's probably closer to the truth. It is no longer a centralized, well-organized, truly lethal organization. It operates sporadically, it's much more decentralized, but it's still there. So in a sense, I think each was emphasizing a different facet of the problem.